Today we're talking about ratios and symmetry. Do you have attractive proportions? Is your chest underdeveloped? What's your waist to hip ratio? Are you attractive to the opposite sex? All these questions were going to be answered in this video because I couldn't find anything on YouTube that discusses it in this much detail. Step one, you're going to measure your right knee. Now make sure you have your knee with a slight bend to it. Make sure it's not too tight but not too loose. Take that measurement and also measure your wrist. And it's always going to be your right knee and your right wrist. Now I do my measurements in centimeters. You can do inches if you prefer. So now you've measured your knee and your wrist. Now which side of your body do you actually measure? It's always going to be the right side. So as a PT, you're always taught to measure the right. Just because if you measure the left one time, you're going to get inaccurate results because they're all different measurements. So for the purpose of symmetry, you're going to measure both sides because obviously you want to see if this arm is bigger than this arm, and then you'd work unilateral movements on this, the weaker arm. All this means is you're doing one leg or one arm exercises like this, like a bench press with just one dumbbell, or like cable lateral raises just with one arm. And what that's going to do is fix the weak imbalances, so it's going to make you more symmetrical face on. And now we're going to take measurements in a second. So when you're measuring, make sure you don't actually put the tape measure too tight that it's constricting you, because obviously that's a smaller result, and don't make it too loose that it's baggy. So now it's time to take the measurements. What you're going to do is take the measurements in the correct order, which is like this. You will have your relaxed arm, measure it midway, and then you're going to do your flexed arm. So what you're going to do is flex your bicep and then measure around the tallest peak. Third, you'll do your forearm, and that's just the biggest chunk of your forearm. You're then going to do your shoulders, which is between your collarbone and your nipple. So you're just going to measure midway from there and then all the way around. You can get someone else to do that one because it's a little bit awkward. Then you measure your chest, and that's straight around the nipples. Measure the waist, which is the smallest part of your stomach. Measure your hips, and that's the biggest part, so just around your bum basically. And then you're going to measure your thighs. Now you do this by measuring 6 inches above your knee and then measure around that part of your thigh. So that's always an accurate measurement. And then the last two, you're going to measure your calves, which is just the biggest part of your calves on the upper side of your calf. And then you're going to measure your neck. You don't really need to note this down because I don't either. It's just a reference for what we're going to do next. So after taking your current measurements, you're then going to do your goal measurements. Now these are really important to get right. So this is what I said is going to be the more confusing part. But stick with me because this is the second to last step. So your goal measurements are how big your muscle should be to look attractive at your peak. So based on your wrist and knee measurements, this is what it's going to consist of. Now the order that we've just measured in, we're going to have to go into a different order to work these out. And I'll show you why in a minute. Number one, we're going to start with your flexed arm. And all you're going to do is take your wrist measurement and you're going to times it by 2.5. So my wrist is 18 centimeters. I'll times that by 2.5 and it comes out at 45 centimeters. Right now, my flexed arm is currently 37.5 centimeters. And it needs to get to 45, but don't get ahead of yourself too much. This is going to be the next step. So we're going to take all these measurements first and I'll discuss what to do to fix these imbalances. So number two, we're going to work out what size your forearm should be. Now this is your goal flexed arm, so the goal that we've just made, which mine would be 45 centimeters, and you're just going to times it by 0.8. So don't get too confused, just work them out one by one as I'm going through the video, pause it, use your calculator, and then write it down on your notes. Number three is going to be the relaxed upper arm. So this is just your goal forearm times 1.2. Nice and simple. Next point is your shoulders. And what you're going to do is times your waist by 1.618. Now the shoulders one won't actually be too accurate if you've got a bigger waist. Let's say you've got a bit of fat around your waist. That'll mean your shoulders have to get wider. So all you got to do is cut down your waist, which we'll talk about in a minute. But if you have a skinny waist like me, say 28 inches, you'll be fine with the shoulder measurements there. And step five is to work out your goal chest measurements. So all you do with this one, really simple, is your wrist times 6.5. So that's even more simple because you don't have to work out all this extra stuff. So just do your wrist, 18 centimeters for me, times 6.5, and that'll come out at 132 for me. Number six, you're going to do your thighs, which is another simple one, your knee times 1.75. So for your calves, you would do your wrist times 2.5. So for me, that's 45. And then you've got your neck, which is the exact same number because your neck and your calves should be the same size. Roundabout. And we've got two last ones, which is obviously your hips next. What we go there is your goal thighs. So your knee times 1.75, that was your goal thighs. And all you do is times your goal thighs by 1.65. And now obviously, I think this is a bit big on the hip side for guys. Like you don't want too big of a bum, but it does make sense because you want it to be bigger than your thighs. 1.65 times bigger sounds about accurate. Don't take this measurement too seriously on your hips. Don't focus on growing your bum too much as a guy. And then number 10, you're going to do your waist measurements. And all this is going to be is your goal hips that you just worked out times 0.86. And now 0.86 is the ideal. I think I was 0.84 based on what I am now. And that's why girls are complimenting me so much. This is just a magic number, just because my back, my shoulders are wide, my waist is tiny, and then my hips go out slightly. Now my goal waist, based on this, is apparently 90 centimeters, but I'm only 80 centimeters. So obviously you don't want to increase by 10 centimeters on your waist. I think this will just apply if the number is below what you are. So let's say you're 100 centimeters and it says 90, that's better. So you need to just decrease it by 10 centimeters. But if you're under it, I wouldn't increase your waist at all. What you want is just nice and tight around your waist, and then it tapers up. So summary for that point, if you're over on the waist measurements, decrease it, but if you're under, you don't need to get to a bigger waist. That just seems counterintuitive. And then the last step is the most important one. Now this is what you should focus on the most, which muscle groups. All you're gonna do is go through each individual part. Let's say we start with the upper arm. You're gonna get your goal upper arm, so mine is 43.2, and then you're gonna take away your upper arm now, which is 34.2. And then this equals a 9 centimeter difference, which is pretty big. So if I increase my arm size by 9 centimeters, that'll be my ideal physique. Just on my arms, right? And then you do it for your flexed arm, you do it for your forearm, shoulders, chest, thighs, calves. And then as you can see on my screen, the bigger differences are marked in bright red. So my lacking muscles are in my arms, my chest, and my calves. So I've got to prioritize these because they're the furthest away from my goal. So my calves, I'm going to do 20 to 30 reps at the gym. This is just because calves respond to a higher rep range. And then triceps make up 2/3 your arm. So I'm just going to focus more on triceps to grow the arms. So if I'm going to work on the triceps the most, to get them to grow, you can do it at different shoulder angles. So if you do push downs on one day, that'll do a certain type of your tricep. Then you do skull crushers the next day. So you lie down on a bench and then you're at this angle. That's a different type of muscle. And then if you go above, overhead extensions, and you do some of them on the cables, that's going to grow your muscles even bigger than if you just did push downs. So you're going to keep switching it out, making sure you know what muscles respond to what better. And I can make a new video on that if you want some extra help. And then my chest is obviously one of the weakest too, which is 8 centimeters difference. So all I'm going to do for that is 8 to 12 reps, and that's how you get the chest to grow the most. And also my calves, because I didn't really train calves, I didn't train legs properly, so I'm surprised my thighs aren't like a 9 or 10. And thighs respond to about 15 reps, so I'm going to prioritize that. And then working on all these priorities, making sure you get all these numbers down to a similar level, so you get down to 5 centimeters on each, and then you just keep decreasing all of them at once, 4 centimeters, 3, 2, and then you're at your ideal physique. And then you can just keep progressing from there. But as long as you're working on this, your proportions are going to look amazing. So now you know how to measure yourself. The next stage is actually getting the muscles to grow faster. So any muscle groups that you're lacking on here, I've made a separate video to actually enhance the muscle growth. So it's called How to Accelerate Your Muscle Growth in 24 Hours, and that'll help you get there faster. So if you want to watch that one, click it now, and I'll see you on the next one.